Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, good evening. Welcome once again, Ginger, the voice on your doorstep. If you can see our video tonight, please like our video or please say something. You can wave to us so that we know that you are with us tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Ginger, the voice on your doorsteps again, a Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock. We are once again knocking on your doorstep, asking for your time and your data. We are here, excited and happy. Heritage Month, all things language tonight. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Ginger, the voice on your doorstep. We can see our people coming through. Thank you so much. We can see you there. We've got quite a number of people already watching us. Oh, we are so grateful. It means that you are waiting for our speakers in anticipation. That's so lovely. We've got experts tonight to speak to us, to converse with us about our heritage, about language and culture. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just give this moment for our viewers, maybe 2 seconds so that they can tune in. If you are watching us tonight, can you kindly like our page or can you kindly say something, wave to us? Good evening. We will start in a few seconds. Ginger, the voice on your doorstep. We're so excited to be in your living room, in your bedroom, and maybe in the bathroom tonight with you listening to us. We're so happy. Thank you so much for coming through. We can see you coming through. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again 7 o'clock Wednesday, and we are here as Ginger, the voice, bringing you all things language tonight. And we shall start in a few seconds so that we do not waste time. Let's just give it 2 more seconds. Someone is just sending me a message on Facebook to say they are coming back in 2 seconds. We will not wait for long because our time is running 8 o'clock. We should be done here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And I think we've given each other enough time to start. So we will start our program for the day. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Facebookers. My name is Ginger. I'm the founder of Ginger the Voice. We're a company that seeks to give hope, courage, and enlightenment. So we do this through different platforms such as singing, speaking, and also hosting talk shows. So tonight we are closing with a bang, Heritage Month. It's all things heritage and culture. So tonight we're talking about language and how it impacts on culture. We want to know if there's any correlation between the two, and if there's any relationship, how deep it is. So we got ourselves here at Ginger the Voice and got you as well, experts in the field. We've got PhD holders in our midst, and so they know what they're talking about, and we're so excited to have them here. Thank you so much, Dr. Zoliswa Mali, all the way from Boston in America. We also want to thank Dr. Kunju, all the way from the Eastern Cape. They are here tonight to speak to us, to hold a conversation with us, to talk about language and how it impacts on culture, specifically African languages, as they are experts on that. So we've got with us Dr. Zoliswa Mali, who is a senior lecturer at Boston University. She has a PhD in second language acquisition, focusing on linguistics and technology, and she got that from the University of Iowa. So we welcome her in our midst. We also have Dr. Kunju, well-known to have written his thesis in the language of isiXhosa, which is something unique, which is something different, and which is something that just stands out for all of us. In fact, it shows us that as the African nation, we need to embrace who we are. We need to love our language, and we need to actually push it forward to the education system to acknowledge that we want to study, we want to learn in our own home languages. So tonight we have our 2 wonderful and beautiful guests. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Zoliswa Mali, all the way from Boston. before I give you time to speak, can you just tell us who are you in terms of your career, and why were you interested in doing a PhD in linguistics, and how long did it take you? Because I do know that home is in South Africa. What made you go so far and so further to go overseas to study about language? What motivated you?
Greetings, everybody. Thank you, Ginger. That answer would require an hour to respond to, but I will try to condense it in 2 minutes. I have always loved language. Initially, I was a teacher in the schools in the Eastern Cape, and then I went on to do my bachelor's at the University of Fort Hare, which is where I started to learn isiXhosa. For that matter, my actual major was English. And I thought that's what I'm going to follow. I was doing English pedagogics and other things. And then I just took isiXhosa just for taking it. And I fell in love with it right away. Linguistics was even more fascinating to me. Professor Mini and others who were my instructors made it very interesting to me. So I ended up deciding to add it to my majors. And so with that having happened, I ended up getting to Stellenbosch to do my master's there in African languages. And I was getting more and more drawn into the language and its culture and other things. And so I always had the aspiration to further my studies in the United States. And so 1 year, I was commissioned by my department to host a group of instructors that came from this state that I'm in now, Massachusetts, who had come to try to do some research and bring students to the Eastern Cape. That was long, long ago in the 90s. So that is from then that I ended up getting a door opening for me to come to the United States. So that's when I was invited to go and start an isiZulu program at the University of Iowa, whilst I would be also doing my PhD in linguistics, which ended up being second language acquisition, technology, and other things. So I have always loved language, especially my language, isiXhosa.
Oh, lovely. Okay, wonderful. Dr. Hleze Kunju, we're so happy to have you here. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. Tell us, your story is quite intriguing. It's interesting. I mean, you decided to go against the norms. You cut across what people wouldn't do, specifically in Africa, because there's this perception that English is a measure of intelligence, and everyone wants to speak English. Everyone wants to do everything in English, especially within our education system. What drove you to writing your thesis in isiXhosa? What made you fall in love with the language isiXhosa?
Okay, Nkosi kakhulu Ginger, ndiyabulisa nakubantu bonke ababukeleyo, ndithi molweni kunonke bethu. Uthando lwam nesiXhosa kungendlela endikhule ngayo. Ndikhulele eMqanduli, eNgqwarha, eMaqumeni. Ndifunde phana, yonke into ndiyenza lapha sifundiswa ngesiXhosa. Yonke into zonke nje izifundo zifundiswa ngesiXhosa. Ndacinga ke njengomntana khula into mhlawumbi ke yonke indawo kufundiswa kuyo elapha kufundiswa ngesiXhosa naseziyunivesithi. Ndafunda eCofimvaba, ndaqonda into yokuba andifuni ukuphumela ngaphandle apha ephondweni. Ndifuna ukuhlala apha ephondweni ukwenzela into yoba ndiqhubeke ndifunda ngesiXhosa. Ndiyasoyika isiNgesi kakhulu. Ndaqonda uba okay, iyunivesithi ekufutshane nje ziyure nje 4 ukusuka ekhaya ukuza apha eMakhanda Road University. Ndaqonda mhlawumbi yona izaba kufutshane endinokuyithanda mandizokufunda kuyo. Xa ndifika izinto ayiyo lento bendicinga uba yiyo, kufundiswa ngesiNgesi. Yaba into eyandiphatha kabuhlungwana leyo, yasokolisa kakhulu. Ungafana ucinge ke nawe useklasini, ndenza umculo, ndenza idrama, kwa ezifundo ezikunqabile into yoba kubekho amaXhosa apha okanye abantu nje abantsundu. Kugcwele nje abantu abasebenzisa isiNgesi njengolwimi lwabo lwasekhaya. Mna isiNgesi ndiyafana noba ndiyaqala ukusibona eyunivesithi, kodwa funeke ndibhale iimviwo ezifanayo nezi zaba bantu. Ndafumanisa ukuba kubuhlungu le nto, ndiqonda uba ndiyarhalela kodwa into yoba kuthi kanti ibindim lo ubhala ezimviwo ngesiXhosa, bona bonke abantu balapha bazibhale nabo ngesiXhosa kwenzele bave le nto ndiyivayo. Ewe ke yandihlala ke loo nto leba ndiyafuna ayivakali kakuhle nje le nto yoba ndifunde ngesingesi. Ekuhambeni kwexesha nangokuya ndikhula ndikumfundi ndafumanisa into yoba hayi mani lilungelo lam ukuba ndikwazi ukufumana imfundo ngolwimi lwam endiluqondayo. Yakhona ke nekomiti yolwimi eRhodes xa ndiyijonga nayo tyhini kuthiwa apho umntu uvumelekile into yoba asebenzise isiXhosa ndaqonda uba yho wagwetywa ndlala. Ndanomdla kakhulu ke ngoku ukufunda ngolwimi lwam. Yiyo loo nto ke akukuba mhlawumbi ewe ke zazikhona izinto zokunto yoba masizame iindlela zokubuyisa iAfrika kwezemfundo i-decolonization njalo njalo. Ewe ndandizama ukuphendula nakuzo, kodwa eyona nto yayingundoqo kwayinto yoba ndifuna ukwenza umsebenzi ngolona lwimi ndiluqondayo kuba isiNgesi siyandohlula kakhulu. Yaba yiloo nto nje eyandikhuthazayo, nolwimi ke ndihleli ndiluthanda. Ndizabe ndiphela apho kwangoku.
Okay, all right. Dr. Zosamali, I believe that you can just say a few words to us talking about the correlation between language and culture. What is the relationship and how deep is the relationship?
I can say, for a start, language and culture are totally intertwined. There is no way that you can, what shall I say, you can be proud of who you are and your heritage when you cannot speak your language or read or write your language. If it was in a different forum, I love to speak in isiXhosa, but I know that there are viewers here. Many, I'm seeing them on Facebook Live who are in here in America from different cultures. I'm seeing my Kenyan friends. I'm seeing my other people who don't speak isiXhosa. So I have to speak in English so that they can understand what we mean. Otherwise, you know, when I'm in my turf, I speak isiXhosa. Language and culture are intertwined. There is no way that you can embrace the other and discard the other. For you to know who you are, to stand confidently in anything else that you purport to know, you have to be strong in your base, which is your own language. I am thinking, as you are asking, when I came here to the States, I have had classmates who are Asians from Japan, from China, or from anywhere else. And I observed with appreciation that these people, even my students, some of my former students, some of them were not that fluent in English, and yet they were super smart. And which tells me that when somebody is taught the subject matter, the content of what they need to learn in their own language, it goes deeper, you internalize better. Just like Dr. Kunju was saying, I'll paraphrase what he was saying for the benefit of the viewers who didn't understand what he said. He explained that his education system started in isiXhosa, his first language, which happens to be my first language as well. Throughout his education, he was getting educated in isiXhosa, and he decided that even when he goes to university, he wants to utilize that. And I think that's what made him the guru that he is now, because he wrote in isiXhosa, and I know he can speak English. He wouldn't have done his drama and other things in isiXhosa, but he wants to endorse a point, I believe, that you do not have to only speak English for you to think you are sophisticated and knowledgeable. It is better when our children get the basics in their own language. I will quickly jump to something else that I'm reminded of. When I was a lecturer at the University of Fort Hare back in the 90s, I remember a number of us, we decided we were going to start a school, which some of you, even our host here, were educated at, named Davidson, a preparatory school. That school, even though it was English medium, we made sure that even though we are university professors, we are going to make sure that isiXhosa is taught in that school, so that we don't have children who speak through their noses only, and they cannot read, they cannot write their own language. Now we are proud to know that even if you are put in a different turf, you are able to express yourself in your language. There are things that you cannot say well enough in another person's language. Even in the classes that I teach isiXhosa here, I teach isiZulu. There are things that I cannot fully transmit in English. So I have to be an actor as well and bring it out, whether by music or by my own body language, because language and culture go through your voice, and they go through whatever else that you do. Gestures, your facial expression, proverbs, idioms. How do you transmit those if you don't know your language?
Okay, I see. Doc, you are talking just now about sometimes you cannot express yourself fully in the English language, but it becomes better if you express yourself in your own home language. I'm actually reminded that most people would say, specifically where I come from, that, when you're angry, you just want to express your anger in your own language, and you feel much better in that way because the point is set across. So I hear what you're saying. Can you just maybe tell us, is there therefore a relationship between language and culture? Maybe you can just define, Dr. Kheze, maybe you can just define for us what language is, as an expert for language. What would you say language is? And also maybe you can define what would you say culture is, so that we can get a base of understanding.
Okay, inkosi kakhulu Ginger. Ulwimi. Ulwimi, sorry.
English bazokuva nabo abanye bakumamele.
Okay, kwenzeka lonto ngengqondweni yami kumshe kale. Kodwa ke njengoba sentshilo uGqirha Mali ukuba nawe ugqibothi xa unomsindo ngahle uthethe ngolwimi lwakho. Nami xa ndonwabile kuba nzima ngahle ngithethe ngolwimi lwami, so uyazi uba ndiye esiXhoseni. That means I am happy, and then you can just maybe put in 2-3 words in summary of what I said if I happen to speak in ngolwimi lwami. So last week, Dr. Klaas here on your show, he spoke about 5 things being the pillars of the heritage. He spoke about inkcubeko, culture, imbali, history, ulwimi, the language, ubuni, the identity, and umhlaba, the land. These are the pillars of the heritage. Kodwa ndifuna ukwayama kakhulu to what Dr. Mali has said, is that a language and culture ngumtya nethunga. Awukwazi ukuzinca ngenye. You can't express yourself in one without the other. Ndenza umzekelo ke ngabantu base Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, I argue that it is their culture that has preserved the language, because there are no schools where the language is taught. There were no schools for many decades without schools, but they still speak the language almost better than I do, because of their culture. Inkcubeko yabo. Awukwazi uzawuthetha kanjani ngolwaluko ngesuku lolwaluka ngesingesi, uzawuthetha kanjani ngentonjane ngesingesi, uzawunqula kanjani izinyanya ngesingesi, uzawuphahla njani ngesingesi, and so on. So these are the cultural things that need specifically your mother tongue language. So when you then have your mother tongue language, you're able to do this, which is part of your culture. But if you do not have your language, then how can you do these things, and how can they even be effective without your mother tongue language? So basically, your culture is as part of your life, part of you, who you are, part of your daily life, way that you express yourself, that you share it with the people that are around you, and so on. And without the language, it is totally impossible to do that without your mother tongue language, because then if you're going to do these things in English or in another language that is not, your culture, it can't be as effective as it should be. So basically, language is your identity, and so is culture, Yeah. So for me, rather than having language as one of the pillars of these things, actually for me, language is the pillar that's holding all these different, or that's holding inkcubeko, because you need to express your culture in your language. Imbali, history, your history, I think it's better if it's done in your language, which is what I did in Zimbabwe. Because I was basically trying to capture their history, but looking at how they've managed to keep the language going for so long. So I thought, what better way to do that and to honor them, having the first document written well, the best way to honor them is to have that document written in their own language. And these are people that are coming from the Eastern Cape, as I said before, which means that the people that are here who don't know about this also want to know about this. And I'm talking about the Xhosa people here. So, and also what better way to do it in the language that they understand best. This was written about 4 years ago. And to this day, if you ask for the stats in the main library where it is archived, it is still the most viewed thesis in the history of our university, and still remains that way. And which then challenges this thing about if you want to be accessed widely, then you need English. So. Then how come then the thesis written in isiXhosa that even 4 years later still remains the most downloaded thesis? I did write a master's in Sokola kanzima, but it was never shared the way this thesis has been shared. I've never gotten messages, the amount of messages, even as I'm saying 4 years later, still receiving messages from a different wide range of people asking things about le thesis. So ndizama ukuthi inkcubeko yakho nolwimi. Yeah, basically I'm trying to ukongeza kule nto ithethwa nguDr. Mali that inkcubeko nolwimi zingumtya nethunga azikwazi ukohlukana. Yaqonda njengoba bethetha ngenkcubeko yakho you express it through language. Your history, I think, is important. We've got so many books, a House of Palo, Amakoma, and so on. And I'm thinking, but this is the Xhosa history, and the majority of the Xhosa people don't have access to this information because of the language it is written. So I think it is really time to really try and have this information, the history done in our language, which is also your identity and the land and so on.
What I want to understand from you, Dr. Hes, and maybe with you as well, Dr. Mali, then as people who are experts in this field and people who are, for lack of a better word, activists for African languages, then what are you doing in order to talk to government to infuse African languages within the education system so that our children will not, well, including me and our generation, will not think that it is best and better to speak the English language so that we can, if I go for a job interview, sometimes you might find that specifically in the IT space, that I don't meet a lot of clients per se, and I don't need to have an A or 100% on the English language because I've got the skill that I need to work with. But now on the job interview, because I do not understand English quite well, I somehow will fail the job interview, and someone who can speak better, who's been to the so-called Model C schools, is then taken in my space. So what are you guys doing as experts in this field, as activists, to say to the government that we want this narrative to change? We want to infuse our African languages within the professional space, the different industries within the education system, so that our children can embrace their home language.
I will start there because my story will go way further in terms of when than Dr. Hleza's. And Dr. Hleza is there on the ground, so he will have even more fresh stuff, and I'm here. I will tell you this, that it did not only begin now. When I was a lecturer at the University of Fort Hare, which I left in 2000. I just want you to know how long ago. For that matter, even when I was a student there doing my undergrad, in our 3rd year of doing our bachelor's, there was a requirement that came from the government, which had come, for that matter, from activists, language activists of the time, that our languages should be taught in isiXhosa. Now I'm talking about isiXhosa in isiZulu if you are KwaZulu Natal, Sisuthu if you are in that area. I know for sure that when I was in course 3, which is your 3rd year, we were compelled to remember literature. We had been doing it in isiXhosa, but linguistics we were doing it in English. We were compelled to help our instructor at the time come up with linguistic terms and change the curriculum into being taught in isiXhosa, even though all the previous notes of the previous years were in English. So when I started teaching for the University of Fort Hare, I was teaching linguistics, which is a Western concept, so to speak, but I was teaching it in isiXhosa. When I went to Stellenbosch to do my first master's, they were doing the same thing, teaching us isiXhosa in isiXhosa, explaining a little bit of this here and a little bit of this there. I think the fact that now our government has endorsed long ago, from 1994, the existence of 11 official languages in South Africa, including our own indigenous languages, is a brainchild of the activists of the time. I am not taking this just to us, but I'm saying even before my precious Dr. Hleza wrote this wonderful thesis that I love, without having yet gone into details with, we had started this. We did our undergrad in isiXhosa, having coined the terms ourselves. When I was teaching, that's what I was doing. I went back to South Africa 2011 to 2013. I was continuing with the same. I remember I was commissioned to head the renaming of the places in the Eastern Cape when I was there, till I had to return to the States, and then I had to give that to somebody else. I was part of a board in the Eastern Cape that was galvanizing the government to take it away from the white paper only and make it implementable. It is there written that our languages have some clout, but on the ground, much improvement needs to be done. I'm going to leave it to you, Dr. Hleza, but I do want to encourage you, Ginger, you and your peers, to say, keep going. Do not think if you are model kids, there's anything wrong with you. It's good for you to know your English, but still, it's even better to know your own language. I usually hurt inside when I hear a kid say, I say kid because I'm older than all of you. Those are as adults still. And the person thinks they are prestigious if they say, oh, I don't want to say that in isiXhosa. Another one will say, oh, isiXhosa will take very long. This person is an umXhosa. Who are you? You're not a person or umlungu, and I'm not being racist by that. I'm speaking South African cultural baggage, because we divide our people according to that way. It was done, we lived in it, we are through it. But language can happen, and we have been fighting with the government, not fighting as rude, but making our point. Over to you, Dr. Hleza. You can say something fresh.
Okay, Dr. Mali. Wow, this is a very interesting question. Thank you so much, Ginger, for this. I've got a bit of a weird journey. That's time is close like I could. So what happened is that after I finished, well, my undergrad, well, studying masters and so on, I started as a high school teacher first, teaching isiXhosa grade 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. When I see it is very hard to motivate the learners, because there is no extra time for isiXhosa. There are no extra classes. It is not accommodated in the curriculum and in the timetable. But there is extra lessons or intervention period, something. There's English and so on. And what does that do to the child? And there are policies, believe it or not, even today, there are schools with language policies that says when you enter the school, you must speak English only, which makes us quite angry. And then you can go to the principal and say, why are you taking the child's culture away or whatever? Then they will tell you that the exam, the English, the matric exam or any exam is going to be in English. And if they're not fluent in English, what should we do? So that's what they, and so on. So because of things like that and policies like that, it was very hard to motivate the learners, yes, you can only go so far, but they're like, even at university, you know, everything is done in English. You know, why should I bother about this closer? Then I was like, I wish I could teach at a university so that I can try and maybe do something about this closer, which is my wish came true. And I became a lecturer at Rhodes in the School of Languages and Literatures, lecturing isiXhosa. So which was something important, because I thought, you know, if then we make isiXhosa more popular here, then the learners in high schools, then they will see that, oh, isiXhosa is seen as something valuable here. So let's do that. Anyways, when I was in the African languages, I thought, we are coming up more with theories and other things, but we are not really, you know, trying to solve the problem right at the bottom, you know. So I thought maybe, I wish I could be in an education department where I can teach teachers how to value and how to khuthaza abafundi benze basithande isiXhosa is. And my wish came true. I went to be a lecturer at Salt Lake University in the School of Education. I was excited, got there teaching teachers to teach the language. Now, the problem that I faced there was that the books, the literature that's prescribed in schools is actually the same literature that I did as a learner when I was in high school, which happens to be the same that my parents also studied, you know, or Thembisa Nomakhaya, Buzani Kubawo, and so on. And as a result, the learners aren't very interested in this. So like, I wish I could be in a creative writing department so I can encourage writers to write more literature in their mother tongue, and fresh literature that the young people now, or even older people that can engage with, that can see themselves in it. And my wish came true. I came back to Rhodes and lecturing in the creative writing section. And here, the first student, so I specialize in supervising in isiXhosa only. That's what my main goal, that I want students to write their thesis in isiXhosa. I think by the end of this year, we'll be close to 20 masters written in isiXhosa.
Sorry, is that within your department, Dr. Hleze, within the African language department?
Yes, that's correct. And mostly the students that I've supervised in isiXhosa.
I actually want to ask you now, so are you planning to have this spread through to other sectors or to other departments? Because we have people who are going to write a thesis in maybe IT, in psychology. Are you going to allow people, or are you fighting for, or are an activist to allow other sectors as well, who are not necessarily in the language space, to write their thesis in their own home languages? And how will this be accommodated by the outside world? So how do you think it will be able to be received in the different sectors and industries as well?
Oh yes, I always say it bothers me a bit that in 2020 we're celebrating a first thesis written in isiXhosa, and then you ask, which department? In isiXhosa department. You know, we should be celebrating a thesis, a pharmacy PhD written in isiXhosa, and a mathematics PhD written in isiXhosa, and so
or
on.
Any other language, not just isiXhosa, Zulu, Tswana, Sotho, you know, Bedi.
Yes, by the way,
Swahili, all of them.
Yes, all of them, all African languages, that's what we should be celebrating, not a Sepedi thesis written coming from a Sepedi department.
And as you are there, it comes to my mind. It comes to my mind what the great man Nelson Mandela once said, that when you speak to a person in their own language, it only ends in the head. But when, in a language they understand, but not their own language. But when you speak to them in their language, then it goes to the heart. And to me, what you are just saying now also reminds me of what Thiongo calls decolonization of the mind. Because if we have been set free from apartheid and other situations that other countries, because we are just talking about South Africa, and yet this applies across the board where African languages are spoken. If we are still thinking for us to be people, we only must be masters of our language, of English or French or whatever you want, the colonial language has been. We still need decolonization of the mind, because there is so much depth in the people, in their own languages. Where I teach, I'm going to come back to you, Dr. My colleague, Professor Falungom, unearthed what is called Ajami. What is that? The writing of non-African languages using Arabic script. And it has come out that there is so much depth of, profundity of stuff that is there in African languages, in African cultures, that people have not been able to decipher over decades or centuries, because they did not worry about learning what is there. How much more about our own languages as well, written in the Latin script, but in our own languages? There is so much out there. You mentioned a few books, and if only we could learn. Even if you go to the Wrath of the Ancestors, there is so much. There are things you cannot understand about who I am till you know something about my language. Sometimes, let's say we've got a repetition of something that makes you, say for instance, Amaxhosa like saying hi, like you would ask me, how are you? And I say, hi, Siapil. And hi inherently is no. And people who don't understand some intricacies of our cultures may think, oh, Amaxhosa they like denying the truth. They like, just because they say hi to something. And it's because you don't understand the intricacies of the culture. So if you get to understand some things in the way of life of these people, which culture is, via their language, via interacting with them, we will be a better society across the globe.
So tell me, Dr. Kez, you're still continuing with sorry to interject you, you're still continuing explaining to me what is it that you are doing at this point in time to ensure that people also, or students who are in other departments, they also write their thesis in the language that they're comfortable in, not necessarily in the English language.
Thanks, Ginger. All right. So what I was saying is that currently, I was saying my first two students that graduated in 2014 who wrote their thesis in isiXhosa. One of them is about to submit his PhD at another institution, and another one is also registered for a PhD in another institution, and they've also supervised students in isiXhosa as well. So we are trying to expand as much as we can, and the more, for me, for now, the isiXhosa department, or the isiXhosa area, or African languages section, as the one that's most behind, that's behind the most currently. So we need to expand here as much as we can. People from other departments do inquire, can I do this? Can I have you as a co-supervisor in a sociology writing, thesis and so on? So those are the things that I am very open to and encouraging them to happen. So, and I think the more we create, I don't want to call it noise, you see now the English, the more we really let people know that isiXhosa at university is valuable and it's being used. And I think it's the more that other departments and the schools right in the grassroots, people can see, okay, now let's value our languages. Even simple things, when we walk at an institution, why is there only Wamkelekile welcome? And it's just one word and everyone knows that. But what does that do in connection with what Dr. Mali just said about decolonizing the mind? What is that doing to my 5-year-old mind when he goes outside just a meter away in a place and then he only sees one welcome? and there's no Wamkelekile there, it sends a message that your language is not important. The more we have the language visible, we need visibility everywhere. And Tangena, the Iringena must be there. Welcome, Wamkelekile must be there everywhere. And when things happen, and we can't expect things to be perfect. For example, let's talk about the Mets paper that also caused a bit of ingxolwane. When things like that happen, if we need to be very careful when we challenge or when we try and find the rigor in them, that we don't when things come, it doesn't matter how terrible they are. Let's welcome them and say, how can we make it better? How can we make it better and even better and better and better until it is where we want it to be? It is impossible to have it on the first time and it's perfect and it matches the English, all right? But at the same time, I'm not encouraging
Okay. Dr. Mali, earlier on, you spoke about, when I started to say that we need to focus on Sesotho Sepedi, you spoke about Swahili, you mentioned, I think, another Kenyan language as well. How important is it that we, in the African continent, we learn other African languages besides the Sotho that I know from South Africa and the Pedi that I know from South Africa? I'm a South African, I'm a Xhosa-speaking South African. How important is it for me to learn how to speak Swahili? What will it do for me? How will it benefit me?
Actually, it is very important. Thank you for having asked that question. I know, for instance, that a former colleague of mine from the University of Fort Hare, Dr. Jama, maybe he's Professor Jama right now, who was in UCT and now is in Western Cape, actually took time. I think he took 2 years and went to Kenya and studied Swahili so that UCT would start teaching. By UCT, for those who don't know what that is, the University of Cape Town started teaching Swahili. And I was thrilled a year or two ago when it came out in the news, and some of my students were sharing it with me, that Swahili in South Africa now is one of the accepted official languages that would be offered also in schools. I want to say charity begins at home. Before we can be superfluous in all these other cultures and languages, which is fine as well, it would be better for us to know better about our own base, not just South Africa, Africa as a continent. Where I am right now, I interact every day or every week with people whose first language is Gikuyu, a Kenyan language. And my knowledge of Swahili, which I have picked over the years since I am in African languages here, you probably know that I also am a president of the African Language Teachers Association here, and I've been training in different levels for all these years that I've been here. So I do speak some Kiswahili and I understand it. I don't understand Kikuyu yet, and I'm doing my best to learn, even if via their songs or whatever way, because we are one. There is so much. When I hear them, even in Bible study, they talk about some cultural norms and values that apply to them. I smile because I'm like, those apply to me too. So absolutely, we are one. It's better if we understand each other's culture and language.
You know, as you're saying that we are one, we are becoming a global village. In fact, the whole world, we're becoming smaller and smaller. So it's quite important. I agree with you. It's very important that we learn each other's languages and try to also understand each other's cultures. I also want to agree that when you say that we are one, I've also picked up, even in the Afrikaans culture, there's some things that are so close to the way we do things as Amaxhosa in terms of respect. For instance, you know, I have a friend of mine who's Afrikaans speaking, and when we watch TV or talk about TV and what happens in the media space, we would actually be, you know, a comment on it in a similar way. Our view and opinion of it would be similar because of our background, how we were raised in terms of respecting our elders, you know. So like, you would not, in an Afrikaans culture, you will not backchat. That is just not done at all. Even in the Xhosa culture or the Nguni culture, or even the African culture, or rather, let me say the Black people's culture within South Africa, you will not backchat an elderly person, you know. So those are the things. I'm happy that you're talking about us becoming a global village, and how we need to broaden our horizon and get to know each other's cultures, understand each other's cultures, and also respect each other's cultures. Dr. Hleza, you earlier on, you spoke about how the language gives you identity. I want to pose a question now. Here I am, born in this global small village. Okay, we all know that in South Africa there's an influx of everyone coming from everywhere else, including your East, West, and North Africa. So there's obviously going, because we are people, we are going to interrelate, and we're going to be in relationships. We'll end up getting married. So here I am now. I'm married to a let's just say a Nigerian who's from the Igbo culture. And now I'm in South Africa. Nobody speaks Igbo in South Africa. My child will obviously speak English and isiXhosa, which is my language. So if now my child, according to our culture as Africans, the child takes whatever the father is. So if the father is Nigerian and is Igbo speaking, but I teach my child isiXhosa because I cannot speak any Nigerian language, then what are you saying? Are you saying that now her identity would be umXhosa? Because in my understanding, we give our children their father's identity. So maybe also you, Dr. Mali, after Dr. Khezi, you can just chip in and say a word or two about my question. I hope you understand what I'm trying to ask.
Okay, I do understand. Ubuni identity is well, there are kind of different layers. Abanye bathi ngathi litswele uyaxobula uphinde ufikelele kwenye uphinde uxobula uphinde ufikelele kwenye, but I always try to say let's not complicate it. When I say who are you, ungubani, when you if you're able to respond to that answer, ungubani, then you will probably give your identity, what you identify as. You can identify yourself as African, that's another layer, at that level. So you're African, if you feel, you can answer that question best when you answer that as an African, or as, so basically there are answers, and I can't say that child, I can't answer for that child. They will have to answer for themselves on what they believe or what they feel inside, that for actually I identify myself as this part, so and therefore I am this person. They probably, if they even identify themselves as Nigerian, and maybe even though they are here, they can still do that. So there are different layers to that, to ubuni, and the person that finds the layer that they identify the most with, then they can go with that, if they of course have evidence that they can give to that. I hope I try to answer that as best as I can.
Okay, so Dr. Mal, what do you have to say?
Okay, I can chip in and say, just give an example for where I am. We have what we call heritage learners here. We have students, for instance, who are Igbo, to use your example, or Amharic or whatever. My department teaches at least 8 African languages, not just isiZulu or isiXhosa. I'm saying this to say, if it is done here in America, why not in Africa? I want to believe it is possible. It is possible that we can start, even in small ways, to open up for the teaching of heritage to our own children. When I was in South Africa in 2012, I was commissioned there to develop a curriculum for what is called Indoni. I think you may have seen Indoni on TV now, because it's been growing and big over the years. And that aspect of South Africa, we had a slogan, my heritage, my pride, was starting off with all African languages, South African languages, even the Khoisan languages. I remember I saw a royal person of that culture speaking in all those many cliques that I would not have known before. So I want to believe that can be expanded, so that each and every African, I know other cultures will say the same about themselves, but we're talking about this one now, will be given a space to develop that pride that you are who you are. Before you can understand other people and they can understand you, you need to know your story and stand in it. It is possible. It can be done. If it is done in the West, why not by us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to get to a point where we embrace Africanism, where we embrace who we are as Africans and love ourselves. I like what you're saying, that if it's done in the West, what's stopping us? Why are we not doing it? Dr. Hlezi, coming to you again. I'm intrigued and amazed by your thesis as well as the fact that you just decided to go and talk about, or rather research on amaXhosa who are in Zimbabwe. You know, it's amazing that I didn't even know there are amaXhosa in Zimbabwe, for that matter. So how, when you were busy with your research, how were they able to preserve? Because I do know that they're a very small group, well, compared to the other groups that are there. And how were they able to preserve their language? How were they able to preserve their Xhosa culture? You know, how in your research, maybe you can just give us a few notes on it. How were they able to preserve who they are, their identity?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ginger. As I briefly mentioned earlier on, that the language is sort of the pillar of these other identity, culture, and so on. So what my findings were that it was the culture. It's because they remain true to the culture. They made sure that they left and they carry on with a culture of ulwaluko. They do that everything, and you will know that ulwaluko is huge. It involves so many things. It involves music. A big part of it is music, and within that music, you also get the history as well. There are songs that are carrying the history, which is all that is done through the language. And the next thing was the land, that actually Cecil John Rhodes gave them the land and said, here's the land for you. So that allowed them to be together without any interactions with other cultures. So, and that meant that they could practice their culture within that land. And also they took some of the books, the old classic isiXhosa books, Ityala Lamawele, and so on. So they still circulated those around and read them, even because they didn't have the schools where they taught isiXhosa, but they still shared that. And also the religion. So religion is like the main, or churches are the main place where you get written isiXhosa. They would order Bibles and book hymns from South Africa. Actually, the bookshops in Bulawayo, they would stock up on isiXhosa Bibles and Xhosa hymns. So at least every Sunday they got to interact, with written isiXhosa. So that was religion. And in 2013, when the Zimbabwean constitution was reviewed, isiXhosa became an officially recognized language of Zimbabwe. So that really boosted the love for the language, and encouraged them, and they started talking about having schools. They started interacting with South Africa and trying to get help in sort of getting syllabuses written in their language. And of course, social media happened, because when when the economy went a bit difficult in Zimbabwe, people started spreading out throughout the world, and the only way to keep them together was sort of the social media. So in that social media, they're able to interact ngesiXhosa, bathethe ngesiXhosa, babelane ngezinto zenkcubeko njalo njalo, besebenzisa isiXhosa. So those were the main things that have kept isiXhosa going for so long without it being taught formally in a school.
Okay, all right. I see that Dr. Hlezi, you're also a poet.
And
yes,
can I chip in there?
Yes.
I have a quick one to add, because it's related to what he's saying. Besides languages here, I teach a course that is called Africa Today. And in the area of that course, I learned together with my students of an existence of a similar case that Dr. Hlezi researched, of people called the Gula or the Gala, who are from Sierra Leone, which is West Africa, who have existed in the United States, South Carolina, Georgia, and whatever, and they preserved their language through various things that Dr. Hlezi has mentioned, to that food preparation, add to that songs, funeral songs, different things that we do at home and take for granted have kept these kids. And a researcher, an American researcher who went to try and find out in Sierra Leone, when he came with these people, when they started to sing, those people in Sierra Leone started to sing, these ones here said, no, that's our thing. And people from different cultures, so to speak, began to know that we are one. We were born and raised in America because they came as slaves, but they preserved their culture for centuries, just like Amaxhosa in Zimbabwe.
Wow. You know, I'm really amazed and intrigued by what you're saying, because that's what heritage is. It's as taking what our forefathers gave to us, preserving it and keeping it for the next generation so that it doesn't die out. I'm so glad to hear what you're saying as well, Dr. Zoliswa Mali. Because we're about to run out of time, Dr. Hleze, I know that you're not just only a PhD holder, but you're also in the arts. So you do poems, you are also a singer, I see. Can I ask you, Mr. Musician, to just give us just one stanza, maybe in a Xhosa poem, where we can hear the clicks. We want to hear the clicks. Just one stanza as your closing clause for us.
Oh gosh, okay. Gosh, all right. Well, I have a poem that I like. It's called Kambani Bakambi. Unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me. It's Kambani Bakambi, and it's just to encourage. Can I maybe just let Dr. Mali talk, and then I can quickly get it ready for you?
Not a problem, Dr. Mali. As we
okay.
As we wrap up,
I had something. Okay, I will wrap up. But when you said music is what I use to teach the language in my classes. And part of the few notes I had made me remember what Zahara sings. She has a line that says, I will say it in the language she has written it, and I'll translate for the benefit of everybody. Umuntu ongaziyo la avela khona ufana nomuntu ongaziyo la aya khona. A person who doesn't know where their roots, a person who don't know where they come from, they cannot use their own language. They are as good as not knowing where they are going. For you to have a vision of where you are going, you better have a vision of where you come from. So this is a huge deal to me. And for us to transmit, I will repeat, our norms and values to our children. I mean, little things like I tell my students, in our culture, I don't just say molo. I say molo sis, molo puti, which is, I don't just say hi. As a result, you write me an email, you just say hi, and you start talking. It shocks me because I think, are you mad at me or what? That's a part of the cultural transmission. You acknowledge the other person. We are because of others. We acknowledge each other, even in our little interactions. Dr. Hleze, over to you.
No, before that, Dr. Mali, as your closing clause, because he's going to close with us with a poem, I want you to just say, maybe wrap up talking about language and culture in terms of us here in South Africa. What then do we do in order for us to preserve our languages and our culture as Black South Africans in the midst of all the challenges that we are facing? What is it that we can do? But before you answer that, I wanted to ask you, so your students, as you teach them isiZulu, am I correct?
And isiXhosa.
And isiXhosa. So when they write exams, they've got the questions are in isiZulu and isiXhosa.
Oh, and they respond in that. I wish some other day you would have time and you would invite them. You'll be surprised. They speak isiXhosa like there's no tomorrow. Those who speak isiZulu, the things they write, you'll be surprised. Many of them, for that matter, are PhD students themselves in their own right in different fields. Just like you were asking here, can people use these languages for other content subjects or area studies? Yes, they can. I have a PhD student now who is researching in Cape Town opera in isiXhosa, and she is writing amazing things in that language. I have a linguistics student who is writing amazing things. He is busy trying to study why do people say mamam tatam, instead of saying mama wam, tata wam, in various languages, and many other exciting things. They do many of. I have a student who wrote my center just now. He went to KwaZulu-Natal to do his research in the dengue fever, and he went to interact with people in isiZulu, having spent no less than 6 semesters of learning it. I've had another student who did 6 semesters of isiZulu and added a year of Siswati and went to research religion in Swaziland. He speaks Siswati like nobody. He is a professor now. So I'm trying to say, yes, they speak and write in these languages.
Okay, so as your closing clause, what can we do in South Africa to preserve our culture, to preserve our languages, to pass it on to our children as heritage? What is it that we need to do?
You asking me or Dr. Hleze?
I'm asking Dr. Zoluswamali to just wrap up and tell us.
Embrace, I want to say again, I'll repeat this proverb, charity begins at home. Now, literally home. Parents, before it even goes to the school, let us be more embracing of our own languages. If I'm the one who goes around speaking only English in my house, how are my children ever going to take this thing seriously? I am talking about me being a mother. I brought my 2 sons here who are adults now, and they can read and write their own languages. In my house, we speak isiXhosa. Of course, they speak English. They don't have an accent like I do because they have grown up here more than I do, but they still read and write and can do things in their own languages. So let us preserve it at home first. And you young people, take pride. Thank you, Ginger, for having led the way in saying, take pride in who you are, starting with your language. Do not think you are less of who you are just because you speak isiXhosa. Look at me, for instance. I am here in America. I've been here for 20 years now, and I did not come here to teach English. Even though in my school I was getting prizes in English, I came here for what? isiZulu and isiXhosa. So do not think there won't be doors open for you just because you embrace your language. That's just how I see it.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Hleze, we are waiting in anticipation to hear that poetic side of you, knowing that you're a PhD holder. You're not, but there's an art effect in you, artistic musician kind of situation happening there. So over to you, Dr. Hleze.
Okay, Inkosi kakhulu, and I hope the poem will also answer some of the questions that you asked to Dr. Mali Ngongo. All right, Qambani baqambi. Qabulani ngosiba, qabani nge-inki, niqubule njengegqirha. Qhubani nigqamise ubuqaqawuli bengqeqesho yokufuna ulwazi. Ningenzi cumbelele kuba isiphelo nguqhabalala. Qambani kuqhawuka imiqokozo eqamangela ubuchopho. Qeqebulani iziqede ezeqabaka ezingqondweni qhusa ziphele nya. Qambani niqhuqa endleleni yeqhawe loncwadi umqhayi. Umqhayi waqamba imiqulu equlatha ubuqholo bengqiqo. Umqhayi zange aqambe eziqhenyanga ubuqhetseba. Umqhayi waqamba imibongo eqiqwe engqondweni kwatsho kwaqala ukuqonda ezingqondweni zethu umaqaba. Umqhayi wayengaqaqadi kwaye engaqoboli. Qambani baqambi. Enkosi kakhulu.
Wow. I like that. You relate. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Zoluswamali, who is currently working at the Boston University, and Dr. Hleze Kunju, who is currently working at Rhodes University in Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape. Thank you so much for coming through to Ginger the Voice. You have made our Heritage Month worth the while. And thank you so much to our viewers who have listened. I hope that you've learned a thing or two. Embrace your culture, embrace your language, understand who you are. It is not, English is not a measure of intelligence. In fact, if you're any intelligent, you will understand and want to know who you are. And that can be brought about by you knowing how to read and write in your own language. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Ginger, and I'm the founder of Ginger the Voice. We're a company that seeks to give hope, courage, and enlightenment. We do this through various platforms such as MC, speaking, and hosting talk shows. See you next week, same time, same place. God bless you.